When I was about 6 years old, around 2004, my mom started taking my sister and I to Dr. Daniel's pediatric dental office. The dental care was located inside a giant yellow mansion that also doubled as Dr. Daniel's house. It was honestly gorgeous. When I first started going to the dentist, I was extremely shy and actually suffered from selective mutism and had a lot of autistic-like tendencies. Needless to say, I relied heavily on my mother's comfort and for someone to give me a voice because it was extremely anxiety-inducing for me to talk to strangers, especially men for some reason. When my sister and I got called in from the waiting room, my mom followed us to the office until she was told by Dr. Daniels that parents were not allowed to be with their children, as it taught kids independence, to which my mom complied with. Once in there, he immediately separated my sister and I, and in reaction to that, I cried because I felt so scared. Dr. Daniels did not like crying, so he grabbed me and put his hands over my mouth and nose, shook me, and aggressively warned me that if I continued to cry and scare the other children, that he would make my situation a lot worse. Obviously, this scared me even more, so I started crying again. Dr. Daniels had enough and took me into his house part of the dentist office, where he screamed at me again, grabbed me by the neck and shoved me. His hygienist Judy came over and told me if I continued to cry, she would spank me so hard I wouldn't know what had hit me. Afterwards, he gave me a juice concoction and left me alone in the house for about 5 minutes, until he took me back into the dental office and did work on my teeth. I guess I just instinctively knew that if I wanted to survive, I had to act like I was not terrified and hold on to tears. All I wanted was my mommy. After the first appointment, my sister and I told Mom that we were scared of the dentist and that he was a mean man, but she just took it as me being an anxious child, so we continued to see him. Each visit was just as terrifying. Every time we pulled into the mansion, my heart just melted away inside my chest. I was so scared. The mansion was no longer pretty for me to look at. Every time we went to the dentist, Dr. Daniels, or the tooth man as he called himself, he always had us have heavy dental work procedures done. We had seals done on several baby teeth and plenty of teeth removed, some with his fingers with no regards to pain level at all. And often when having a tooth removal or seals done, your mouth had to be opened up with a retractor. He would leave us there with the retractor on for about 45 minutes or so before he came to work on our teeth. Sometimes he would eat his lunch while we sat there with our mouth open. Probably one of the worst pains I had ever felt in my life. I remember one time when I was about in 3rd grade, I had been leaned down in the chair waiting with the retractor on for an hour. I was in so much pain I couldn't take it. I sat up on the chair and tried to scream and cry and as loud as I could. Dr. Daniels came rushing over, angry as could be, took my retractors off, and then took me back into his house part again, where he screamed at me for being a big baby and scaring all the other kids. I was so sad in myself because I hadn't cried in so long. He took me back to the dental chair and then pinned me down to my seat in a straitjacket. He put my retractors back on and said that I would have to wait longer because I caused such a scene. All I could do was shed silent tears and drool everywhere, and I couldn't even wipe it because he locked up my arms. Afterwards, my mouth would become so swollen and filled with rashes. It hurt to talk for days. It would have bruises and swells as soon as I left his chair. He would often tell my mother I was a difficult patient if I so much as winced at his torture. Once he removed 6 of my teeth at one once and I could barely eat. While he ripped out teeth, he would often sing songs. It was so Sweeney Todd-like. When I was in 7th grade, I started getting some braces, and we started seeing an orthodontist. Not long after that, we stopped seeing Dr. Dan and started seeing a new dentist, who was actually nice. I had never known that getting your teeth cleaned didn't have to feel like it was going through a saw trap. I think my mom took us out of Dr. Dan's practice when the orthodontist looked at our dental records and saw a lot of unnecessary procedures being done to our mouths. Not long ago, I was having a conversation with a friend about our childhood fears, and instantly my mind went to the Tooth Man. Curious, I googled him to see what had happened to him, and to my happiness, the practice was shut down. Also left under his name was a Yelp page that was still left up. The page was filled with numerous one-star reviews from former patients that were once abused as kids, in his office using the page as an outlet to express their trauma. I started to cry because their experiences were so close and some identical as to what I went through when I was a kid. It was so sad at the time, really validating to know that I was not alone. A lot of procedures we went through were just a scam for him to collect money off our parents' insurance. And now that I think about it, he probably was so adamant on us not crying and screaming for help because he didn't want parents to hear and come and see what was going on. I shake thinking about this. I really pray that he hasn't opened up another practice somewhere. I know it's hard not to blame parents in this situation, but the truth is this man was a swift abuser. For every bruise and swell he had, he would have dental explanations that would make the parents feel stupid for asking. He was an authority figure. I don't blame my mom for not believing us. She knew he was firm, but probably thought we were confusing firmness with meanness. To be honest, even writing this, the torture was so wild it actually sounds made up. She eventually did come around. She's not alone, as there were hundreds and hundreds of parents that were duped and deceived by him. To Dr. Dan, please never let us meet again. And to any parent reading this, if you are ever told to not go in with your child to an appointment, something's really not right. This might not be the best place for this story, since I might have actually been in danger. If you think of a better place for this, feel free to let me know. So I walked to and from school every day. There was never anything sketchy about it since a lot of people at my school do it. Since I take after school classes for my driver's education, now though I'm usually alone on my walks home. This story happened literally half an hour ago at the time of writing this, but it was too creepy not to post somewhere. I was walking home this afternoon after driver's education, and I can hear a car pretty close behind me. I thought it might be my dad since he picks me up sometimes while I'm walking. I notice that it's not Dad's car, but a kind of run-down pickup truck. After I notice it's not my dad's car, I keep walking, but the car keeps driving up to me until it actually stops right next to me. The old Mexican man in the car rolls his window down and asks me if I want a ride home. I say no, but he doesn't let me go. It might have been because he had pretty broken English and maybe he didn't understand me. He eventually got the hint after I waved at him to go away. After he drove off, I got home as fast as I possibly could and told my parents what had happened. First, some background information. As I said in my previous posts, I work for Goodwill. I've been working there for over 4 years and I love my job. Over the course of the time I've been working there, I had good and bad coworkers, but most of the time my coworkers are really nice and friendly. Heck, I became friends with a lot of them. So this coworker has been working there for about 2 months. Also, keep in mind that I do have autism and ADHD, so I sometimes act differently and say things differently. I'm a 23-year-old female. Okay, so let's get right into it before I start rambling rambling on and on like I tend to do. So when I first met this boy, he seemed okay, even though I can usually tell if someone is good or bad. So anyway, he acted nice at first. I didn't have any problems with him. He was 17 or 18, but then 2 weeks ago is when everything went downhill. It started off like any other day. I was doing my job like I always do. I was cleaning the store, picking stuff up off the floor and cleaning out the dressing rooms. They always put this boy in different departments. Sometimes he will be running the donation door and help people when they drop off donations, and sometimes he will run the register. This day he was running the register. So when I was hanging the clothes back up on the hangers, me and the friendly and polite person I am said hi to him. He said, "Oh, go kill yourself, Amber." I felt like crying, but I held back my tears. Then my other coworker came over. Then he started talking crazy stuff to me and her. He said he killed a 12-year-old boy because he had something he wanted. He also said he knows how to get away with murder. He also said when he killed people, he dumped their bodies in the woods. My coworker was just as shocked as I was. He also pretended to shoot me with the thing we used to price clothes. I got so mad and upset I threw hangers at him. I just went about my shift like nothing happened. When I was in another part of the store, a customer asked me if I was okay, cause she overheard what the boy had said to me. I said I was fine and thanked her for asking. Now, normally I take the bus back and forth to work, but that day my dad picked me up. I was crying when I got in the car. My dad asked what was wrong. I told him what had happened. He was upset too. When we got home, I told my mom as well. My mom, being the mama bear she is, said she would take care of it tomorrow since Goodwill was closed by then. So the next day, my mom called Goodwill and talked to my manager. He said he would look into it. Well, they decided that they wouldn't fire him. I can't believe they are letting someone like that work there. I don't feel safe working with him. At least my manager was nice enough to change my schedule so I don't have to see or work with him. Even after my schedule was changed, my mom decided to report him to the police. So we called the cops. I told the cop about it. So then the cop called Goodwill and spoke to the boy. The cop then called us back. He said the boy said he was just joking around and didn't mean it. Like, really? That is not a good thing to joke about. Heck, some people would kill themselves if someone says that. At least it is going on that boy's record. For once in my life, I felt like dying. But thank goodness I didn't die. Instead, I talked to my friends about it and they made me feel better. Don't worry, guys. I know there are a lot of people that love and care about me. This whole thing has had me depressed through. I've been losing sleep over this. Heck, I even had a few nightmares about this boy. Man, that boy has some issues. I will keep you guys updated if anything else happens. Last year, my boyfriend and I decided to move from a relatively run-down flat into a newer, more modern place as house and rent prices were falling. After viewing, we chose this new 2-bedroom flat with private parking, entry via the archway. Our first day of the new lease begins, and we have a week to move all our stuff to this new place. On our first carload, we noticed that a car was parked in our new designated spot and that a man was in it. So we stop and my boyfriend gets out to say that we are now moving in and the space will actually be in use from now on. As he gets out, I begin to move the car into another spot in the meantime, when suddenly the car in our space reverses into me, pushes me across the car park, nearly into a wall at the other side, and immediately drives back into the car space as if he never moved. From this point on begins one of the most paranoid years of my life. With him having just T-boned my car, he got out of the car and was actually on the phone. He started shouting at me. I decided to leave my car when it had ended up so police could see, at least where mine ended up. He wanted me to prove it, presumably so he could leave. He then pulled the race card. He is a big black Nigerian man and I'm a 22-year-old female, white. Then he said I had ran into him. Ignoring everything he said, we phoned the non-emergency police number. No one was injured. While he phoned the emergency line, the lady on the phone treated me as if it were an emergency. However, because she could hear him being so aggressive, police turned up and took around an hour and a half to squeeze any detail out of this man at all. The threat of being arrested worked, as it is a crime to withhold details after an accident. Turns out the man who was shouting and screaming at me, trying to get in the face of some young girl half his age and build, had no insurance or road tax. He actually was a car salesman but abused his knowledge of the company to get personal car insurance using his work insurance without paying for it or them knowing, making it invalid, and he eventually lost his job when they found out. He actually went off on his phone round the corner and brought out some new insurance while the police were there as a new policy came up for his car. He started shouting at me while the police were there, calling me racists, trying to approach me. The police threatened to caution him if he carried on. And then I found out that from his address, he was my new neighbor. Literally the same flat, the same floor, right next to mine. Our doors were right angles to each other. We couldn't be physically closer to him if we tried. The police then left. Insurance claim was made, etc. And we carried on with our day despite my car being written off. Mom and Dad helped us move the rest of the stuff in. First day in the flat, constant banging on the walls from where his flat is, and shouting. This carried on for weeks and weeks. Then he began running to his door every time I came back from the shops, etc., and you could hear him breathing against the door as he looked out his peephole. You could hear his footsteps sprint. This became extremely uncomfortable. I was terrified that he would open it. Given I had no more car anymore, I had to walk to work for a little while, and I would see a man follow me to and from work. The same man would sit at the front entrance to the block of flats and phone someone when I passed him, watching me walk up the street, and then immediately phone someone upon my return, only hanging up when I was in the building. I was so paranoid about this man, despite never seeing him before. A year later, I found out that this man is actually my neighbor's brother. So I was right to be paranoid. I go to the university and I used to see my neighbor on campus, only for him to run off in the other direction when he saw me see him. At night when I got up, or when my boyfriend got up, we used to look out the window because we heard noises coming from the street, to find him standing in the middle of the road, staring at our bedroom window at 3 a.m. A little while later, the insurance decided the accident wasn't my fault and gave me the money for the car. They kept a hold of my excess until the neighbor was taken to court as he was not answering any calls or letters. We got a new car. We actually got an upgrade for cheap. It needed just a bit of TLC. All of a sudden, the neighbor's brother disappeared from the scene. But now began the neighbor looking out the window every time I went to the car. I understand that he could look out when I got to the car as he could hear me leave, but I began to get freaked out when I did non-routine trips, and he was staring out the window when I got back. He was staring out the window when I got back from walking as well. Paranoid me attempted to ease my paranoia by sticking so close to the wall that he wouldn't be able to see me walk back to the flat. As I got to the front door, I hear the intercom pick up and I can hear him breathing through the speaker. So now he started listening to me open the front communal door. I know it's him because sometimes you could hear his kids in the background. A little while later, diesel was stolen from the new car. Nails were put in front of my tires. I phoned the police and made a statement. Nothing came of it as it could not be proved who did it. I decided to park on the street for a while so I could at least see my car from my window. Upon parking on the street, the neighbor kept parking his two cars, one in front and one behind, sometimes so tight I couldn't get out. I moved it back to the car park for him to do the same, one on each side. One day, coming back to the flat at night, I had an uneasy feeling and refused to get out of my car. I locked myself in and someone in his flat was looking out the window at me. I phoned my mom and told her as I was speaking to her, the neighbor walks out from under the archway, comes up to my car, stands in front of the bonnet, and then smiles at me. He then walks towards the back door, enters the building, but then walks straight out the front exit again. The man in his flat was still staring at me. The uneasy feeling then went and I ran up to my flat. One day I took a non-routine trip to a place 2 hours away and got back at the flat late at night. I planned to park on the street that night as I had been for a few weeks at this particular point. Within 5 minutes of me getting home, my boyfriend said the neighbor left his flat and then parked both his cars in the only 2 car parking spaces on the street randomly before coming back in. But at least it made the car park safe. We both found the timing of this off. Upon discussing it with other people, they thought he might be tracking me. We checked the car for a magnetic tracker, which there wasn't. My boyfriend thought that since I gave my number to the neighbor at the accident, as I was being cooperative, he might be tracking that. We phoned my phone company, who changed my number but also advised me to turn off all location settings. Upon doing this, the window watching and the intercom listening instantly stopped, and the weird car moving stopped as well. Then one day, he took his kids out his flat, stood them in front of my door, and took a picture of them. For a few weeks after that, we had around 2 chancers a night try our door handle. We used to listen to the hall door open, then our handle move, then the hall immediately open again, and someone legging it downstairs. We never hear any other door being chanced, just ours. Then the neighbor's brother appears again. He hides behind the bins you have to drive past to get out of the flat. At the point, the neighbor sits watching the bins. This happens on a Wednesday at 6, a Friday at 4:30, and a Sunday at 9, all PM times. All regular times I need to take the car out. We were worried that they were planning on running out in front of the car and the neighbor being a witness. Then as quickly as it all started, it stopped, apart from the peephole stuff. Most people would be relieved, but I'm actually more worried and anxious than I was. What if he was planning something?